I recently started posting on YouTube a little more consistent, and the views started going up a bit. It's definitely fulfilling to be able to help others with their buying decisions and experiencing products. At this stage of my YouTube journey, it's a one-way investment, meaning it doesn't pay enough for it to be profitable. Understandably so, as I just started, so I'm careful in picking up products and equipments to help me in my journey. Recently, while browsing through the used market, I came across this phone, the Sony Xperia Pro I. Released almost 2 years ago, it managed to attract the attention of the biggest YouTubers on the planet, but the hype quickly settled down. I wanted to know why. Is it because it's a bad phone? Or was there any other reasons that stopped this phone from becoming a mainstream phone? Because on paper, it was one of the best phones that was ever released at the time. Now, this combination of starting a YouTube channel and the curiosity to find out what happened to this phone created the perfect opportunity for me to revisit the phone and answer some questions. Let's go. At just $450, and although cosmetically challenged a bit, the internals are pristine with it never being opened or damaged before. So it's good enough to test and find out whether it stood the test of time. This is my first Sony phone. I have glanced over them in the past, but I never actually owned one. What felt different this time is how small it felt in the hand. Compared to a Samsung S20, it's almost identical in size. And I actually don't mind it at all. I said this in some of my previous videos, that the key to a good piece of equipment or technology is that you have to give it some time to prove itself. Most of our buying decisions are emotional ones, meaning we buy things that will make us happy first and then blend it in with other reasons as to why we bought it. Like for example, oh, it has a good battery, or it has some fantastic speakers. The truth, however, we buy things because we like them. And then, to justify it to ourselves, to not feel like we just wasted $1,000 on an unnecessary piece of equipment, we convince ourselves that it was necessary. Now, why am I talking about buying decisions instead of reviewing the phone? Well, number one, because I'm not emotionally invested in it, and two, because it was relatively cheap at just $450 compared to its original price tag of $1,800. So if it's no good, I have no reason to tell you otherwise. As we go through some sample videos, let me give you my first line of reasons as to why I bought it. When I'm filming some of my unboxing videos, I like to do what's called a top-down shot, which requires a bit of work since I'm working in a small space. I use my Sony ZV-E10 and its flip screen, and it does an okay job at giving me a preview of what I'm going to film. The only problem with the screen though is it's too small. So if there's anything wrong with the footage, like being out of focus or having unwanted dust, I can't see it until I have taken down my equipment and started the editing process. And it's incredibly annoying to put up everything together just to film a 10 seconds video. So having a bigger and a brighter screen will help minimize the issue. The second reason why I bought it is because I needed a quick camera to film whatever I was planning to film. I have a full-time job that requires me to travel a lot throughout the city, which is fantastic because it takes me to places I wouldn't have the time to visit otherwise. The great thing about being in those places is that I can take videos and photos that I can integrate later on into my YouTube videos. My Samsung phones does the job to a degree, but I have lost footage in the past due to incoming phone calls. And not to mention that extracting footage through a 512GB phone through a USB cable is painfully slow. And of course, you have to remember which video or which photo it is amongst thousands and thousands of videos and photos. The Sony Xperia Pro I achieve both these goals. Now, going back to what I mentioned earlier about the buying decision, I think most of you would agree that my reasons are logical to a degree, especially when you consider the fact that a decent external monitor for the camera can cost you upwards of about $250. So buying this phone is not a big spend considering the fact that I was going to buy an external monitor anyway. Now I say all this to say this. I bought it for filming only. I don't even have a SIM card in it. So I'm strictly judging it from a photographer's perspective without being clouded with the hype of a new toy. I can tell you the following. It's an amazing phone. Here's a few things that I love about it that other phones don't have. The shutter button. This button can be half pressed to focus and another full press to take a photo. Next to it, there's another fully programmable button that can be assigned to any app or action you want. It makes filming extremely easy. The moment I spot something I want to film, I reach into my pocket, I press the programmable button to open the camera app while I'm still lifting the phone and press the record button. And that's it. It's super easy. No additional steps required, and it's very reliable because you're dealing with buttons and not touchscreen. Another reason why I like this phone is its processor, the 888 5G from Snapdragon. My 3-year-old Samsung S22 Ultra has the same processor and it's been obliterating day-to-day tasks without any hiccups or slowing down. No matter what I throw at it, it's an absolute beast. The Sony Xperia has the same processor, and so far I have not encountered any issues. Now I do make sure that I don't download any unnecessary apps, but I doubt that even if I did, it would actually make a difference. Another reason why I like it is because of the camera controls. This stuff used to be intimidating in the past. To the average person, these controls are unnecessary. Most people just want the phone to take good photos when they're out with friends and family. And one of their least concerns is what the shutter speed is or their ISO on their cameras. But for a YouTuber, these things are essential. To put it simply, when you're stringing a bunch of clips and photos together to produce a YouTube video, you want a flow and consistency to the footage so you can have one video with consistent colors and white and black balance. This is something that is largely implemented in movies. Hence why you hear the term cinematic look or cinematic effect. This cinematic look that I'm speaking of is most evident in a movie called The Irishman. When you allow your phone to do the work for you, you don't get the consistency you desire. By no means I'm suggesting that the phone is complicated to use. There is a simple mode that's easily accessible on the regular camera app and can be used just like any other smartphone camera. But to me, it is really nice to have all these controls and options baked into an easy-to-use device when you need it. I would also add that if you are a Sony camera user, you will have absolutely no issues navigating through the settings. The interface is almost identical to what you would normally find in a Sony camera. And last but not least, my last reasoning for why I like it. It's the easy, simple to use Android software. The Sony experience is very close and similar to the original Android experience, with minimal learning curves. They do try to force some apps on you, but you can easily uninstall or disable them. Furthermore, the simplicity keeps the phone snappy and responsive, and I am a fan. There are other reasons why I like this phone, like the fingerprint scanner, which has been super responsive, or the always-on display, which reminds me what's this phone for. The front-firing speakers, which makes consuming media a fun experience, and of course, the mighty 4K display. But those are secondary reasons as to why I like it. I mentioned in the beginning of the video that the hype around this phone died quickly. But why? Well, from what I can find, there are 3 main reasons. Number 1, Sony is terrible at launching new phones. As an example, there has been rumors about launching the new Pro i2 for 10 months now, and it's still not out yet. And given their track record, even after announcing it, it'll probably take them another 6 months to have it available for consumers. Number 2, the price. At $1,800 asking price at the time of its release, it's a huge ask. You can still find buyers with this price tag, but you effectively lose the majority of the customers when there are phones that offer similar features for less than half the price of the Sony Xperia Pro I. I'll put a link in the description for a retail unit that's currently selling at AliExpress for around $500 new. And this is something that I don't understand about Sony phones. They start at a very premium price and they quickly drop in value. Number 3. Heating issues. As per my experience with this device, it has not been an issue at all. The Snapdragon 888 5G generates a lot of heat, and the slim design of the Sony doesn't allow much room for a sizable heatsink. Now, by stating that I didn't suffer from this issue, it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. I did test it for a prolonged period of time of about 20 minutes of 4K recording, and it was doing just fine. The only advice that I have for you regarding the heating issue is don't buy devices sold by Docomo. Docomo basically is a network carrier in Japan that sells phones to their users and sometimes rebrand them like AT&T and Verizon in the US, and avoid any refurbished units. In the end, I'll say this. After spending 2 weeks with it, I'm absolutely thrilled to have had my hands on it. To this day, I don't have a SIM card in it, and I plan on keeping it that way. I think that it produces some of the best photos and videos right after a full frame or DSLR camera, without being too bulky or difficult to carry. I'm glad I got the chance to experience this device, even though I'm not utilizing it to its full potential. The sleek design, the cameras, and the overall experience tempts me to want to get my hands on the next Sony phone, if they release it at a reasonable price and time, of course. That's the end of this video. If you enjoyed this style of voiceover videos, consider checking my voiceover playlist with videos just like this one. And if you've lasted this long, thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next video.